Hello there, my name is Brother Sean, and I've been guided to do this short video. It wasn't on my list of things to do today, which is Good Friday, but early this morning I was out in our local village where we have the farmers market, and it was heaving with children because of the amusement and the gathering of various Christian denominations on the green by the market stall holders. And as I came out of the newsagents, having bought the weekly paper, there was a small procession of what I presume were Christians carrying a wooden cross. And I have to say this, as a Catholic Christian myself who embraces all faiths, I never met such a shower of miserable people in all my life. And they are supposed to be the representatives of the resurrected Jesus. Now, this isn't a criticism, it's an observation. I had hoped to join them, although I was in some degree of discomfort, and it was a bitterly cold morning. But I looked and I thought, my heart doesn't belong to these people. I said good morning to a few and I got a courteous good morning back. A few dressed me up and down thinking, well, who are you in fancy dress? And then I met the local minister who had me ousted from the church in our village for not being a Christian. And she's there marching, bless her, like a sergeant major. She reminds me, forgive me, so much of Hitler. But she is a child of God and I love her dearly. But I thought, right, you ignore me most times, so this morning I'm going to really wish you a good morning. So I, at the top of my voice, good morning. And it blew her away. And I thought, are these the Good Friday people that Jesus died for? And as I was driving home to find a spot where I could park the car and walk the dogs, I was just meandering through the woods. And I felt a sense of sadness for my brothers and sisters who are celebrating their master, my master, our teacher's passion today. And I didn't feel or sense from our group this morning that this was a celebration of life, but instead it was more like going to a wake or a funeral of someone you couldn't stomach. My take on the Good Friday people might shock you. It's not intended. Because what I'm sharing with you is what I sensed in my walk with Gaia, Mother Earth, as I embraced the loving Father, Mother God, through the natural world in the woodland. And I sensed something very profound, very simple, yet very challenging. And it was the message that we repeated in morning prayer this morning. The words of Jesus. Do not stand at my cross and weep. Celebrate what I have done for you. And I carried on walking and I reflected on those words and I thought, well, yes, for the best part of 54 years, I mourned Good Friday. I used to get terribly depressed thinking that I did that to Jesus, that he was crucified for me. And I would relive the horror of what he went through. And I made myself quite ill. And I know many of us have done that, and some still do. But the words that came to me were very true. Do not stand at my cross and weep. Celebrate. Let today be a celebration of my love for you. I did this for you. And then I had a flash to a program I watched about the Christian services and festivities around the world. Excuse me, and it showed you two countries in particular where they really go to excess on Good Friday. Italy and the Philippines. And I was absolutely in shock. Take the one in Italy. It showed you families that have passed down through their bloodline from father to son. A barbaric practice which they do on Good Friday. And the saying in the village goes, excuse me, that you can see blood running in the streets of this particular village in southern Italy. And what they do is they have a round disc with a strap to support the hand. And from that strap are small pieces of glass. And they bash it against their thigh and draw blood. They puncture the skin in multiple places where it's quite viscous and bloody. And the blood pours, but the pain is excruciating. And the producers asked, why do you do this? Oh, because my father did it. Why did he do it? Because his father did it. There was nothing about the Passion of Christ. It would appear that it was a generation thing and also an ego trip, attracting the crowds to watch them doing this. And as the father of the little boy, was preparing and showing the producer what actually is involved, the producers looked at it and thought, oh gosh, what a torturous piece of instrument this is. And the little boy's eyes got me. He looked on in horror. And he was listening to his father saying, well, he's the next one in line to do this to himself. And he had the little boy, and they're paraded with a cloak and a crown of thorns like Jesus. And they march in a procession, the men with their sons. And at 3 o'clock they start bashing their thighs with these dangerous instruments, and the blood is everywhere. And you ask yourself why. And in other parts of Italy there are people flagellating themselves, whipping themselves, drawing blood from their back. And then of course it took us to the Philippines, which is, as you know, a predominantly Catholic country, a very devout people, a very simple people. But I was left in absolute horror, where there were men having nails nailed into their hands and feet to reenact the Passion of Jesus. And I'm thinking, is that what you want of us, dear God? Do you want us to subject ourselves to this? And then it became clear from the readings of Monday, Thursday's evening prayer, I do not ask for sacrifice or oblation. I do not ask for burnt offerings from my children. What I ask for is an open heart, to listen to my voice, to be attentive. And I feel that that's the Good Friday people. A people who are willing to hear, who are willing to come out of that comfort zone where there's so much excessive religious influence and try and see it from a balanced point of view, from a mindset of God, not a mindset that is anti-God. And I am not anti-God, nor am I anti-Catholic. I'm just on the outside looking in at the practices we all took for granted, because in the monastery we weren't excluded from punishments either. We had a novice master who was pro-Jesuit, and we had a very old Jesuit priest, a beautiful man, a very saintly man, but he took it to the excess. And he instructed the novice master that his novices should whip themselves on the first Friday of every month. And not only that, but cold showers when we felt any sexual desires. And to top it all, we had to wear a chain on our waist, not over our long johns, but next to our skin, and pull on it to draw blood from the hips. But the whip that we had were 3 athlete shoelaces, quite long, made of leather, and tied in knots, and then soaked in water to give it a bit of pressure and bounce. And when they were dried, then we would whip ourselves, and it was called the corpus. And many monastics will be familiar with that, and it's still practiced, but it used to make me heave, because I don't do pain. I guess that's why I became a nurse. I would much rather kill pain than do pain. But having said that, this is what we got for the reading for today, Good Friday. Bring me the sacrifice of thanksgiving. Take nothing for granted, not even the rising of the sun. Before Satan tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden, thankfulness was as natural as breathing. Satan's temptation involved pointing Eve to the one thing that she was forbidden. The garden was filled with luscious, desirable fruits, but Eve focused on the one fruit she couldn't have, rather than being thankful for the many good things freely available. This negative focus darkened her mind, and she succumbed to temptation, as we all do. Then when you focus on what you don't have, or on situations that displease you, your mind also becomes darkened. You take for granted life, salvation, sunshine, flowers, and the countless other gifts from Jesus. You look for what is wrong and refuse to enjoy life until it is fixed. And when you approach God with thanksgiving, the lights of his presence pours into you, transforming you through and through. Walk in the light with me, he says, by practicing the discipline of thanksgiving. These are the Good Friday people, a people who know how to celebrate, not suffocate with religious guilt and fear. Happy Easter.